Hey everybody, welcome back to the BOE podcast. I am joined by Will and not Jack because Jack is still out of the game.
Yeah, he's being lame. Just because he can't talk doesn't mean he can't join us.
Yeah. But anyways, we're gonna have a shorter podcast today. Kind of like what we had last time. Um so Couple things in the gaming news. Resident Evil 7 came out, and much to everybody's surprise, that actually ended up being a pretty good game. Have you heard anything about that, Will?
Yeah, I've seen actually a lot of playthroughs of the 3D version.
Oh,
Going through
the
reviving.
VR version.
Yeah, that is terrifying.
Yeah,
I
it's one of those games that I really want to get, but I really don't want to spend like $60 on. But since I know I'm getting it, I haven't watched much of anything, like people playing it or whatever. So it's one of those things where it's just like I don't know what's going on. I've only really heard it's really good and pretty terrifying, and I really want to get it, but I don't know if I really want a $60 get it.
yeah. I mean, it depends. Like if you had people around you that you could play it with or sort of scare the heck out of them
hmm
instead, it would be excellent and probably worth it.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where it's just like it. I think the total runtime of the game is about like 9 hours or something like that, and just with money situation going through grad school and things like that, I don't know if I really want to spend $60 on it. It's not. I'm not saying it's not worth $60. I think, in my opinion, it's worth very much so $60. But in my current situation, I could just wait.
Yeah, it's a lot of mine too, where it's like there's so many things I want to buy. Like to all those fake accounts watching this that I set up. Um, that so there's 40,000 views on this video.
Oh, sick. Maybe we can finally get our first sponsorship, and then
That,
you can be the sponsor whore you always were.
oh yeah, Rolling Rock. Oh, just rolling
Dude,
those
Rolling
checks.
Rock, if you want to sponsor us, we'll take it.
Oh, given, yeah, it could
Anybody,
be.
if you want to sponsor us, we'll take it. We don't even care what you're sponsoring. You could be sponsoring little baby Adolf Hitler. Don't care. We'll plug him.
You know, Julio's man thongs. My favorite man
Dude,
thongs.
I want some Julio's man thongs. Those top quality thongs. Brought to you by
Dude,
Julio.
the edible ones. Oh, beautiful snack.
Just when you're on the go, just gotta pop a thong.
There's a wonderful catchphrase for that.
Yeah, dude, Julio, you should hire us.
We'd
If
be
if
amazing.
this
We could
podcast thing doesn't work out, Julio can hire us and we can make slogans for his thong company.
go on like morning DJs and just pimp out Julio's man thongs.
Yeah,
It'd be awesome.
yeah,
But
but
yeah, I get you. There's so much stuff I want to buy.
yeah.
I'm really into photography and stuff, and so it's
Oh
like
yeah.
as I learn more, more and more as I mess with light and stuff,
Oh
it's
yeah, you're
like,
like, oh, I want like this lens or this filter or whatever. It's
oh
like,
yeah,
oh, that only costs like $900.
all the backgrounds and stuff, and like soft lighting and reflectors and just all the
Yeah.
setups that you could do that would make everything 100% easier. It is ridiculous.
Yeah, photography is one of those things where it's just like I like learning about how things are done with it, like how cameras actually work and how like distances and like other basic like camera terminology that I never bothered to learn, but I watch a shit ton of YouTube videos about.
Yeah,
I like learning about that and just seeing how those things work, whether or not the information sticks, because I'm still in school and I have more important things that need to be in my brain at the current moment.
exactly. There's
But
this really old book that I picked up for photography.
hmm
It has like the most exciting title. It's what was it? The architectural and Oh shit! It was like the Oxford Architectural Guide to Photography. It came
Ooh.
out somewhere in like the 90s, and it's just the driest book I've ever read in my life. But it it just goes through everything from like it gives you the exact formula on how to calculate like the focal point.
Oh my
It tells
God.
you exactly how these were like old cameras from like the 30s work and like the movable tracks that you can get for them. It's incredible, but I've gotten to like two chapters and like it just gave me a headache.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. One of the things I really like watching is like kind of behind the scenes footage of how like a lot of movies are made and things like that. And some of the stuff the cameramen do for that is like crazy. Like they're like for like car scenes, they'll close off the road and then they'll have, drivers on the other side and then they'll have stunt drivers driving the car and driving the other cars in the lane. And the cameramen are like on a pulley rope that is like attached to the car, and they're just holding up the camera and then just being pulled along by this car and like 30, 40 miles an hour sometimes. It's
Yeah,
fucking
that's
crazy.
incredible. Like if you remember during the Olympics, was it Usain Bolt ran into someone on a Segway?
Oh yeah.
That was the point he had was he was carrying this like several $1,000 camera running down a Segway
Oh
just so he could capture them at like full speed.
yeah.
And people that do, if you ever watch any like longboarding videos or anything like that,
Mm-hmm.
it's those people going that fast and doing tricks. And then the way they capture them though is you have another person on a longboard with this really expensive camera following them the whole time. It's terrifying.
Yeah. Like some of that stuff just gets like crazy. Like I like doing like the video editing and stuff like that. I think it's like fun, but like at the same time, like people like with like video software and like cameras and things like that, like you can tell when it's somebody's like main hobby because they're dumping in like thousands of dollars for like a camera or software or something. It's
Oh, it's
crazy.
incredible. You could drop so much money. Like I was looking up, because one of the things I have this old camera, and by old I mean like 5 years old. It's like it does some slow-mo stuff, but I
Hmm.
was looking at the actual level of like mid-range slow-mo cameras.
Yeah, those
They're like
are
$5,000.
I think I actually know the
Crazy.
names. They're like phantoms or something like that, or are those two like high level?
I haven't read too far into it. I saw the $5,000 and
Yeah.
stopped right there.
Yeah, no. It's like
It's
some of the one of the guys who works at Rooster Teeth also is one of the he's one of the bigger names in doing like slow motion recording and things like that. And he has a channel called Slow Mo Guys. And
Mhm.
they'll have like slow mo shots of, just things happening and they're goofballs so they do goofy things. But like some of those cameras, man, just insane amount of money.
It's incredible, but the stuff they can do, like
Oh
I
yeah.
could have seen like the slow-mo guys' videos are incredible. Like,
Hmm.
have you seen any of the videos of like them throwing an egg into like a lawnmower and it's just seeing it like slice part of the egg and then the
Yeah.
egg still moving forward with its momentum and then slice another part before it breaks completely apart.
Yeah, no, just like shit how like physics works and stuff like that. Like I love that's some of my guilty pleasures for what is it? For like YouTube. Well, I guess they're not guilty pleasures. One of my favorite things to watch on like YouTube when I'm bored are like a lot of educational videos. Like I'll watch like Vsauce. Vsauce is like one of my favorite. Cause like
What
I
do they do?
like what?
Oh, what are they?
Oh, Vsauce is they kind of like go over they're like what about this theoretical hypothesis, right?
Mhm.
And so they'll talk about that, but the way he does it, the main guy, is he kind of starts going off on like tangents about things. Like he'll bring up something and then you kind of start going into this like rabbit hole of like, well, what about this? What would happen if this thing happened? Speaking about these things, what happens with this, and stuff like that, and it's crazy. The So like those, I love watching because they're very scientific, but it's kind of like MythBusters scientific, where
Hmm.
the science is there, but it's not like the main focus. They'll go over it, but they're not going over like this is proven by like these equations. They're like this has been proven.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, the whole point of MythBusters really was like, here's the base science to like
Yeah.
understand why we're doing this or how it might work, and then here's like more C4.
Yeah. And then
It's a great show.
the other videos, the other channel I really like watching, and I have no idea how to pronounce these people's names. It's Kyrgyzstan. Uh, it looks German.
Hmm.
Kruzgesagt.
Ah,
Yeah,
so phonetically, yeah, is how it's
yeah.
pronounced.
I have no idea how to even begin to pronounce that. But their videos are amazing. They kind of do it. They're the very sciency MythBusters type where they they know what they're talking about. They know the science behind it, but they don't like tell you all the formulas and things you need to know. They only just tell you the things you need to know, so to speak.
Yeah, just to enjoy the video,
Yeah,
because it's not like you're not watching it to learn. Like, read a textbook if you
yeah.
really want to know
You're
the science
more
behind it.
pardon me. You're more learning about it, so theoretically you know more about the world. In reality, it's so you can have something interesting to talk to at a party. You can be like, "Oh, did you know about this?"
Oh yeah, it's like half the reason I listen to NPR on the weekends. Also, I came across this very random tangent. The coolest statement that I've ever said.
Hmm.
I had gotten off work early because I had to go drive over to take this calculus test
Right.
because I'm taking calculus online and it's awful and I have to pay for it and
Hmm.
it's really hard. Um, and so I'm doing this, and so as I'm driving to a calculus test, I'm listening to NPR about how frogs eat and their was it the sheer viscosity of their saliva,
Yeah.
which made me is the best, the coolest thing I've ever done in one thing. But essentially, it's like, why listen to that? Like, in what life would I ever need to know that like a frog's saliva, like with
Yeah.
force,
Like
it either becomes
especially
more
for like
viscous or
you.
less viscous?
Yeah, you're not signing up to be like a fucking biologist or whatever. Learn about frogs. You don't need to know about like how frogs fucking saliva is like honey or some crazy thing like that.
Yeah, like it's like fun fact at a party.
Yeah. It,
Because a bug stuck to its tongue, the eyeballs drop out of socket and knock it off its tongue. Like, I don't
dude,
need to know
frogs are
that.
fucking metal.
It was like just hearing that it's like nature's amazing.
Yeah. No,
I could
nature's
not
great.
even on drugs, like no one, you can't make that up.
Yeah.
It's so absurd and realistic that it could exist.
So, um, one of the reasons why we brought this up was because we were talking about the slow mo things and how like physics works and how it's like just crazy how like things when you slow them down,
Mhm.
how you actually see how they react because you think in a baseline oh, I throw an egg into a lawnmower, as soon as it hits its blade the force is enough, it just like poof shatters, just demolished. Well, that's not how it works. It actually chops it up and can keep chopping it up before it actually spreads out. um but one of the things I was watching last night was again from the Kyrgyzstan, fucking those people, um,
Yeah.
was about addiction, and it
Hmm.
was an interesting model. So mostly the way they did addiction studies and things like that in the past, where they'd have a rat, and a they'd have one water bottle, just regular water, and then another water bottle that had like methamphetamines in it. And when they did those studies, the rats would go to the methamphetamines and, would basically be dependent and would only drink eventually the methamphetamine water. But now they've done other studies. I don't know how recent this is. This might be old news. But they've done other studies where he was like, well, the main scientist behind the guy was like, well, we look at all these, people who like have broken limbs and things like that, and we give them methamphetamines months and months on end. These people should be addicted, but they're actually not. So what's going on? So what he actually ended up doing was he made like I think he called it like Rat Park or Rat Heaven, where these rats would basically be free to have all the play, stuff. They were, they had a bunch of rats around them and things like that. And the rats almost never drank the methamphetamine laced water. And so it's just really interesting of how addiction is more kind of set up in the ways of kind of your social surroundings and things like that. You form an addiction based on anything because you're lacking some kind of social need or want or something along those lines.
I mean, there's also a genetic aspect to it too, where you have, like they found recently, like the people who are generally more susceptible to like alcoholism or some kind of like heroin drugs, where it's like when you're dealing with that in relation to rural areas and sort of a lack of access to a way to deal with it causes problems. If you have long running lines of addiction and where people are.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So anyways, that wraps up the Resident Evil 7 part of the show.
Yeah, a very in-depth review. It looks beautiful, though. If you do get it, it looks amazing and in 3D from what I watched, because I am a noob when it comes to actual gameplays.
Right.
I will share this. I mostly just watch the Game Grumps and don't pay attention to the gameplay at all.
Hey, that's fine. I mean, that's basically how I watch a lot of video game Let's Players and things like that. Is I mostly kind of use them as like a daily podcast, a 10-minute or so podcast where they basically talk about whatever, right? They're almost never talking about the game. And, the Game Grumps were really good at that. Like, what ends up happening is the game kind of dictates how the talk goes. So, if they're playing, like, Bloodborne or, like, Resident Evil 7 or whatever, right? You kind of get into those aspects, oh, this is kind of a scary game. Let's talk about these weird things that happen to me or, stuff like that. So I think it's really interesting. So if they're playing like a good game, because for Game Grumps, they tend to get, what is it? If it's a bad game, I don't want to watch it because I know how it's going to go. It's going to go, Aaron gets really mad, Danny laughs a lot, end of episode.
But those are the best. They're playing this horrible golf game currently.
Oh no.
And it's just I don't remember who the voice is. Eugene Levy. And essentially it's imagine mini golf except you have no control of power. You can only control you can only control if it goes right, left, or middle. And then the fate of your shot doesn't really depend particularly on like where you hit it. It's more of like if the game determines if you're lucky. And it's in like the Philips CDI player, so it's this awful like late 80s kind of like terrible graphics that like they beat Wand of Gamelon. It's the same thing. It's so terrible.
Yeah,
it's hilarious, but there's no like I would never watch them play a game I like.
Yeah.
Because I would hate every second.
Well, see, like with
watch that.
Games I like, what I end up doing is just basically, tabbing out and working on some other work. Treat it as a podcast rather. But oh my god, it gets infuriating when you're like please pay attention to what the game is telling you, because half your complaints would be removed.
Yeah, or read any of the instructions. They repeated 6 times.
Oh my god. Yeah.
It's so funny. Like it's amazing. Like those are my favorite videos to watch because I just love reading the comments. And because every single one of them is like, how dare they not read the instructions, and what are they doing, and they're terrible. And it's like, why do you listen?
Yeah.
This happens every single game they play.
It's literally
you just care about
every
this one.
single game they play does something like that. But yeah, so yeah, Resident Evil 7, if I get the chance, if I get some free time, which is very unlikely, I might pick it up. What is it? So Resident Evil 7 came out. Seems really good. It basically kind of rebooted the franchise, and so to speak, people are all excited about it. It ended up being very good compared to like 5 and 6, so that's always good.
Yeah, it looks amazing, honestly. Like they did really well and made it fun and scary, and it's pretty terrifying from what I can tell, and pretty interactive for a horror game.
Yeah. So, the next thing I wanted to bring up before we get into, I guess, the main meat of our conversation was, have you heard about the Conan Exiles game?
No, what is that?
Okay, so this might be the best game for the dumbest reason possible. So, let me read its description here. If you go on Steam, it says, an open-world survival game set in the brutal lands of Conan the Barbarian. Survive in hostile worlds, build your kingdom, and dominate your enemies in both single and multiplayer.
No, sounds pretty basic.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's your kind of basic run-of-the-mill game. It has mixed reviews on Steam, but I'm going to give you an argument why it might be the best game ever. Full disclosure, I have not played this game at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're looking through, okay, it looks like Rust, but, set in, it looks like your standard survival game. It looks like Rust, it looks like Ark Survival, why should I buy this, how much? $30, jeez, this $30, survival game when I already have another survival game. And you're like, Jake, why should I buy this game? I'm about to tell you.
Of course. I say that when I buy games too.
Yeah.
My inner dialogue is named Jake as well.
Yeah. So you're like, Jake, why should I buy this game? The fucking Barbarian Edition, like, things, like, it's got a cool shirt, but, like, why should I buy this game? And you're like, alright, I'm gonna give you 2 words of why you should buy this game. 2 words, and I think it will immediately sell you on this game. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Dong slider.
What?
Yeah. So when you create your character, you're, on, like, you're crucified or whatever, you're hung up on a cross, from what I can tell. And, you change your, like, skin color, and you do your basic, character creation.
Customization.
Your character's fully naked, by the way. And there is a slider that is for endowment. And you can slide that thing up and down, and it will change your dong size. So you can awesome. Just make your character just have a ginormous dong or a micro penis.
That's amazing. That's the perfect level of customization that, like, if you're wearing pants, no one's going to care. But you made that character.
Yeah, it's just so, like, it broke the internet when the game came out. People are like, there's dong sliders in a video game. Video gaming has evolved.
That's awesome.
So one of the so there was so there's this game called Nier Automata, Nier Automata. And when the demo for that game came out, I think it was like a weekend demo, or maybe the demo's still up. I haven't checked. but it's a game made by Platinum. Platinum makes really good beat 'em up games.
Sure.
And so this game came out. I was like, all right, I'll play the demo. Yada yada yada. And then I was on Twitter, and it, Twitter and Nier Automata is going crazy. Pardon me. People are going crazy because the game's really good. The setting is amazing and stuff like that. And somebody was just like, they posted a screenshot, and it's the main character is female, and the main character is like bent over, and
of course,
someone
natural.
worked the camera, and on the main character you could see like the little browning around the character's butthole. It has like a she's wearing like a thong and shit like that, but you can see like the thing. It's like Nier Automata has a butthole, and it's just like gaming has evolved.
Wow,
So
that is a wonderful combination of things.
yeah. So like that's all I think of is like whenever these like dumb things that make the internet just fucking break. It's just like the dong sliders and what do you call it? Conan. It's just like gaming has evolved. We've evolved to dong sliders.
This sounds terrible. Like
Yeah.
previously, the only game that you could do that in was like Spore, and that was when you made the horrifying pink monster
Oh god, yeah.
that you would call the a spore creature creator, short of calling it a penis.
Yeah. What was it? So, trying to think of what's been going on lately. So, let's see here. Oh, the For Honor beta. I played a little bit of that about a week ago.
Oh, nice. How was it?
I was not thrilled with it.
Oh, that's not good.
So basically I played through the demo, and that was it was all right. Just basically like the tutorial rather than the demo, I guess I should say. And I was like, all right, this is, whatever. And then when I played against AI opponents, because I just didn't want to hop into a multiplayer match. Plus, I didn't actually expect to find a match. I was playing at like 8 a.m. on a weekday.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't expecting to find a match anytime soon. I was about to go to the gym. So I was like, all right, I'll just play, against the AI. It's fucking way too hard to do it with a mouse and keyboard.
Really?
So the mouse controls, if you don't know, it's based off stage fighting for the game. So
Oh, sure.
you're either attacking above, left, or right on the opponents, and that's how you block. You move the cursor to the left or to the right or to up, so that it will block the opponents, and then you left click or right click to do a light or heavy attack in that direction.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's so finicky with the mouse. It's just a huge turnoff because you're like, all right, I'm gonna move it to the left to block block his attack. But if you move it even slightly up or slightly right, it will move your direction, the stage direction, to that.
Well, that's horrible.
Yeah.
And
So like
unplayable.
with a mouse where there's going to be constant movement if you're basically like almost touching it, unless you're really pushing hard down on your hand, it's going to pick up on that motion that you're just, making because you're playing a game, and it will do that. And I was so kind of turned off because I was able to get through the tutorial fine, when they kind of took things slow. But when it got to what a normal human would be doing,
Yeah.
I just couldn't stand it. It was just too finicky. And to the game's fairness, I did not play it with a controller. I just was kind of turned off, and I was about ready to go to the gym, And then when I got back, I just really didn't want to bother hooking it up, making sure it read the controller input properly and did everything else.
But still, there should be an option to turn down sensitivity.
And
Usually in most
and
games.
there probably was, but the baseline sensitivity of the game for mouse and keyboard was way too high.
That's awful.
Yeah.
Usually, like, they've gotten pretty good at that stuff. Like, even in, like, Halo and all that,
Yeah,
they kind of nail what average is, and then you can adjust it really high or really
exactly.
low.
But this didn't feel like average. This felt like too finicky. So I was a little bit, eh, I was excited because it seemed fun. Um, it seemed kind of interesting. It seemed kind of like a mix of like Dynasty Warriors and kind of one-on-one combat type gameplay stuff. So I was like, all right, I'll give it a shot. And then I just wasn't impressed. I just didn't like it. Because of the base sensitivity. And
Yeah, it makes sense.
and if the game ends up, being better, things like that, I might give it a second chance. But for like $60, I don't know if I would, actually want to go out and give it a second chance.
Yeah, it's not worth it for that much. If it was like on sale at Steam, maybe like for like 15 or 30, it was
Hmm.
like, well, maybe you could get used to it, but for 60, it's
Yeah.
like you could buy like Destiny or whatever game and get an intense game for it. Which actually I saw that they're coming out with Morrowind for what was it? I don't remember.
Are they
It's
doing like a remaster or something?
I think so. I think it's just a new version of it.
Huh.
Um
That's interesting to say the least.
Yeah, it could be fun. I mean, honestly, like they've come out with so much of like Dark Souls and
Hmm.
all those games to have a much more, from my understanding of what Morrowind is, it's a much more like social based interaction kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whereas like that matters so much more in how people like you and how you interact.
Yeah, so I actually never really got into the Elder Scrolls games until Skyrim. It was just because I just never really had a, I guess, passing affection for them. And at the time, I didn't really play a lot of PC games. I don't think I really started playing PC games until halfway through like high school or something like that. Right about Skyrim time, really.
Makes
Um,
sense.
it just never, it appealed to me, I guess. But kind of
Yeah,
going
like I
back
was
to the sorry, go ahead.
I always kind of played PC games where it was like we had a Super Nintendo and N64 growing up, and I still have the N64. Um, but like I played almost just PC games where it's like I think we got some like random rip-off version of Mario, and then I played RuneScape, if you'd call it a game.
Yeah.
Uh,
No,
and then
I'll call it a game. I mean,
yeah, like
it's
I
a
played that
game.
for thousands of hours, all the way from like late middle elementary like through mid high school.
Yeah,
And then
I would play like a bunch. I would play some games on the PC, but I wouldn't really, that wouldn't be my primary uh, way to play them. I was fortunate enough that, well, we didn't really have like powerful PCs, I guess, so to speak.
oh sure.
We had PCs that would play solitaire. Um, but what is it? Generally in a console's life cycle, the generations, I guess, I would probably have like two. I'd get, the first one, um, uh, depending on which ones my friends were getting and things like that, what games, they had and stuff like that. So, like, that would be that, and then, maybe 2 Christmases later I get another one or something like that. So I played a lot of console games growing up, so I never really played a lot of PC. The thing that introduced me to PC games was I got my own laptop, and I could play games on them, and I ended up playing Guild Wars. And
Oh yeah, that's pretty addictive.
yeah, yeah, and there were some more. I would play other games there and stuff like that, but Guild Wars is kind of what got me into PC games, so to speak. That really kind of solidified me as if you want to say it, like PC gamer or something like that. But
I mean, if you were going to go into the master race, I suppose. Like I had the opposite experience where it was we had a Super Nintendo forever and then traded up for an N64. And then I had the N64, but like I didn't own a single other console besides like DS. Like I think I had all of those eventually, just throughout time. But like I didn't buy another console until like 360, which was like mid late high school. And then from then on, that was like the last console that I actually owned. So I've never really had a console for long periods and used it heavily. So PC was kind of my only route beyond like the two that
yeah,
I could do. And
mine
so I
was
played
kind
a
of
ton of PC games.
yeah, mine was kind of the opposite. My family, the PCs were, for work. You do work on those,
Mhm.
and what was it? You play those, or you use computers more so for work. Typing up documents and things like that, and then you'd have like my grandparents had an NES at their house, and I played the original Mario Bros. And Duck Hunt and things like that, which I have now taken because they're not using it.
Oh yeah, what are your grandparents gonna use with an NES?
Yeah, but
Um, yeah,
yeah,
it makes sense.
yeah.
It's just
So
like,
that's kind of how I kind of viewed it, and then um, there was plenty of more games before Guild Wars that got me in, but Guild Wars is what got me in playing kind of majoritively. I ended up playing a lot of Guild Wars, and I actually did some kind of local, not really local, but local enough um, tournaments in Guild Wars where I would play competitively.
oh nice. I actually never got to that point where it was like so much I would watch like my sister play video games
Mhm.
because from early on I was not good at them. So like that's why I played RuneScape and a lot of like Dragon Fable and pretty much every other game that you grind for the sake of grinding to grind better in the future.
Yeah.
Because they didn't require skill or timing. The only game I ever got good at was like Diddy Kong Racing for N64.
You are a fucking god at that game. It's
It's
scary.
so good. I like those are the only like flying controls that I
Hmm.
ever learned. And so I never knew that they were wonky or weird
Hmm.
until I tried to play another game. And it was like, this is awful. Why do they control this way?
Yeah. So
But like it just makes sense. That game is so easy to me because I've never learned another way to play it.
yeah. Um. So maybe this kind of ties in. So one of the games I really loved and found, which surprisingly doesn't really have that much kind of backing behind and things like that. Um, it's called Blade Symphony, which is a fighting game where you use various different types of swords and things like that. And it kind of ties in with For Honor for the combat. And I'm so used to Blade Symphonies where it's very methodical. It's very thought out. You combo into different things, but you have to worry about, all right, am I slashing from the side, up, down, left, right? Am I doing a heavy attack? Am I doing a light attack? Am I attacking from the air? Am I attacking like with a fast attack and things like that? And the game's really fun. I should really go back to it because I think now, yeah, it's a full release now, which is really cool. Um, but the game is amazing, and oh my, I just looked how cheap it was, and I think they've lowered the price pretty drastically because I don't remember it being this cheap. It's $5.
That's so worth it.
It's like seriously, like if you're looking for a fighting style type game that's pretty different. You know, you have to worry about swords, different types of swords, and things like that. Um, this game is totally worth $5. I don't know if a lot of people still play it, but it's seriously like I've gotten it for a bunch of my friends, and it is an amazing swordplay game.
So like all the controls feel very natural when you're not like when you're actually swinging a sword, but like it's
Right.
very intuitive to
It
like how you would hit a button and swing where you want.
yes. It's very more, you know, like if I'm moving my mouse to the left and I'm hitting the fast attack, I'm going to do a fast slash. And then I can, you know, from swing it to the left, I can then move my mouse, you know, up and hold the right button to do a heavy, like, you know, from the fast, I can immediately go down and do a heavy slash downwards. It feels very intuitive, but it's very methodical. You have to think about your moves, because if you miss or your opponent blocks it, um, they can just immediately, you know, counteract it because you know, you've claimed your sword against theirs, and then they can do a fast attack and things like that. It's crazy.
That's awesome. There's a video that I would recommend people check out. And Barry of Game Grumps put out he does this whole how about game series,
Mm-hmm.
and there was one called oh crud I can't even pull the name, but it was all about the concept of how invested into a game you are.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was looking at like with the more so the introduction of like 3D into games and sort of getting to see so much more. Like you have those kind of like 3D golf games, which are like the equivalent of like Wii Sports.
Right.
Um, yeah, in the level of like quality and interest. And it was more so looking back at exactly like that, like how intuitive and smart is a game, how kind of emotionally invested can you be in it,
Mm-hmm.
and why would you care about it? And so it's looking at different examples of games and why they're interesting or why they succeeded beyond like a Mega Man 1.
Mm-hmm.
I think was one of the examples, and it's like it teaches you as it goes, as you face new enemies and introduces new things in the very first level in a way you can do it, to then show you further and just throw you into it, knowing all the things you can do, and you
Mm-hmm.
can test them out and try them in the next levels.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
interesting.
No.
Like I never thought of games that way, to be
Yeah.
honest.
A lot of older games have really amazing game design in how they teach you without having to tell you what to do. And I think it's kind of like it's almost in a way a lost art of, you know, this is what you need to do. We're going to kind of ease you into it and then start ramping it up harder and harder, as you kind of progress through the game to really kind of, you know, test if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it's a skill, like because you can make games that are beautiful, like games like No Man's Sky.
Mm-hmm.
That game was massive when it first came out, and it was so interesting. It's like, oh, it has this computer generated world that's all of like it's enormous, and like you'll never find anyone. But at the same time, immersion. That's what I was trying to think of. How about immersion? And it's like it had no immersion. Like, sure, you could name stuff and find new animals, but for what was the purpose? You're just wandering forever. There's no particular reason that you'd care enough to complete the game.
Yeah, you're not invested in it at all. It.
Exactly, and that goes along well with like how you know the game or how you're taught it, and
Mm-hmm.
why you might think the characters are good or why the main character is at all interesting.
Yeah, like it. And I think that's a lot of, what do you call it, issues that um kind of exploration games have, is that they don't realize, like, once you've made a world, um once you've made a world, you need to actually give your players a reason to continue on exploring. If the main goal of your game is just to explore, your user base will be very tired very quickly. because they'll be like, oh, it's just reusing this asset, but it's, thrown in a different location and things like that. So,
Yeah, I can. Oh,
no, no, go ahead.
I can say that like a game for me recently, or I guess not recently, in the last like 2 years, I dropped like 40 hours or something into Stardew Valley, um, which is a beautiful game, and like it's all pixel art. It's all
Hmm.
kind of they do really interesting. Like if you're walking through crops, they have
Yeah,
different
like
abilities for it
rustling
to do that.
animations and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
exactly. And basically the way they do it and the way they kind of keep you invested
Hmm.
is in the very start, like there's events that happen in the individual seasons and there are events that only happen in specific years. And so in order to get each of the items or to sort of continue to grow your farm and get things and make money throughout the year, you have to kind of take advantage of those seasons and build up to the point where you could at the 3 year mark you can do a specific event or do something and make the best of it without having to like either wait or sort of put it off.
Yeah,
It's
like
really interesting. It's a great game.
yeah, the what do you call it? That game does exploration correctly, in my opinion. You, your main goal is to build a farm and have fun, but
Yeah.
the way they encourage you to actually check out this world is what makes exploring fun. Like when people say they want an exploration game, really they want a game that has a gameplay that encourages exploration in some sort of sense or fashion. It's kind of like with World of Warcraft, um, where you want to continue on and go see these crazy new places they've built, and then as the game progresses, it just continues to go and go from there. You're more encouraged to go out and find these new places.
Yeah, definitely. I World of Warcraft for me was always because I played it back in like sixth grade or something,
Mm-hmm.
like the first time I kind of played it, and I had no clue what's happening. It's so overwhelming if you're not used to it.
Oh yeah, it's very it's pretty overwhelming if you don't have somebody kind of telling you what to do. But now, especially back then in 2006, the game was like 2 years old. Um, Now it's kind of evolved into encouraging, or not encouraging rather. It's kind of evolved into one of the more casual friendly MMO games out there. They have a pretty good tutorial system. Like it's kind of, if you know how to play games, it's one of the best tutorial systems. Like I got Jack into World of Warcraft, and I was like, hey, you should play it. It's fun. Come on, do it. And he got it, and I didn't help him play. I was fucking busy with school and shit. But he was able to learn and figure out how things worked just from playing the game. And I think that's a really good like learning mechanism that they've like put in. Because I remember when I played World of Warcraft, it was probably pardon me, it's probably about the same time you were, and um, I had no idea what the fuck I was doing in that game.
Oh, it's
Like,
so confusing. It was just like 900 people around me all yelling at the same time. And it was just like, go kill these things, hitting numbers. And I was like, why am I hitting numbers? What do they do? How do I do anything?
yeah, yeah. No, like I could figure out. Oh, okay. Because I played Guild Wars before then. Oh, okay. This is my action bar. Okay, I need to put these things here, and but it was like, how do I do this? How do I remove things from my bag? Other stuff.
Yeah, stuff that's so helpful. Like, there are a lot of games that I'll try and play that I'll not know like the hotkeys or anything.
Mm-hmm.
It'll just take me 4 times longer to do anything in the game.
Oh yeah, like oh boy, yeah. Like
The one game that I actually found not super heavy immersion, like that kind of thing, that just drew me to it, Was one that came out last year, I think, and it was a Hyperlight Drifter.
Oh yeah, that's that.
It
That
was the
is
like RPG kind of
yeah,
like
very
all
like
pixel
pixel
art,
art.
beautiful. Like they
Yeah.
had like lighting pixel art drawn in and just giant monsters and like fairly intuitive like gameplay from because when I do play, I'll play a lot more like dungeon crawlers.
Mm-hmm.
So often like on the computer, the keyboard like shift will be your dash
Mm-hmm.
and sort of up and down and the keyboard and the mouse to click and attack and stuff. And that's pretty much how it was laid out. And it was well done, very smooth, and it was just the most beautiful game I've ever seen.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember reading about this. A lot of the problem was that it ran at a lower frame rate than normal. So
Oh, it
most,
tanked my computer.
yeah, most games run at 60 frames per second, and this game was running at 30. And there were a lot of things kind of later on in the game and stuff like that where because it ran at 30, it was hard to dodge things because you like physically had less time to react to things happening.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I didn't get that far into it, but it was
yeah,
unless you were running like a good computer that was fairly new, you couldn't run it. Like it was so
really,
hard on my computer.
I am surprised by that because it doesn't look that very intensive. But then again, your computer is relatively old.
My last computer was, yeah. I finally did I think I went off and got I got some Dell that I can't remember the model offhand, but it was like
Mhm.
750 or something. And so since then it's been perfect. It's run everything I've wanted. But I try to keep anything downloaded on it to a minimum.
Yeah. Are you still running Linux on that?
No, I would like to. It's just I don't have time.
That
And
yep, that's perfectly
yeah.
fair.
I don't I like Linux and it's awesome and I love it so much more than Windows.
Hmm.
But at the same time, when it breaks, I don't have the
Yeah, you
time to
don't
like
have
get
the
home
time
from
to
work and
fix
fix
it.
it
Yeah.
all. It's
Yeah.
such a pain sometimes. But if I had it, I would definitely run Linux. And I still want to learn Arch,
Hmm.
but I have other things in my life I want to do.
Yeah, like a job.
Yeah, or like eat,
Yeah.
sleep. Like,
Yeah, but yeah, so one of the reasons why I bring it up is I'm just getting so fed up with Windows right now. It's just the biggest pain in the ass to do like a lot of the research type work that I'm doing. Basically, because I need a fairly powerful computer and it needs to be running Linux for the work I'm doing. Like, I don't want to dual boot because I'm lazy.
yeah, fair.
And so I'll just drive to the school and do my work there. But I'd rather be at home.
Exactly.
So,
And Windows is such a like a massive constraint for it too. Like
yeah.
Windows is huge and awkward.
Yeah. But I want to have more games that are, ooh, pardon me, that are able to run on Linux. And the Steam OS thing has been working pretty well for kind of promoting that. But a lot of games really kind of don't support it.
Well, that was my problem too. Like running Linux, I couldn't do anything, especially on Steam. Like there were some games that were awesome,
Yeah.
but a lot of things, unless it was like Counter-Strike or something really major, a lot of like indie games or smaller stuff,
Really,
there's no chance.
because it's been kind of the opposite for me. A lot of the games that I'll want to play and things like that that are AAA titles generally don't have a Linux version, but a lot of the indie games do because they want to hit the entire market. You know,
Hmm.
because if somebody only has a Mac, they want to be able to sell it to somebody who has a Mac. If somebody only has a Linux computer, they want to be able to sell it to somebody who has a Linux computer. Whereas a AAA game, they've already generated enough hype around the game that they don't really need to hit those other demographics that only have those types. because it's not worth the money to them.
Makes sense. I always ended up playing like dungeon crawls anyway, where
Hmm.
it's like it's kind of hit or miss with those anyway. So it's like some dungeon crawl games are really supported and well done and have all of the backing that they need to create anything.
Yeah.
And some, even if like they're AAA, are just like, here's a thing of randomly generated whatever nonsense, um, and play it because you have a audience for it.
Right. And I guess the last thing we'll talk about, and then we'll wrap it up, is the Fire Emblem Heroes came out. What was it? 2 days ago?
Something like that.
Yeah, something like two-ish, maybe 3 days ago. From the time of this recording. How you liking it so far? Because you told me you played a bit of it.
Yeah, I picked it up this morning. It's really fun. Like I remember we were
Hmm.
talking about puzzle games and not having not them being on console often.
Hmm.
And this is a game that if I had the console, I would sit down and play like 100 hours of it
Yeah.
because it would just suck you into the strategy and attack. And it's the exact kind of game that I don't want to download because I would read all of the wiki for it. I would understand all of the heroes and the strategy behind it, and just
Yeah.
play 1,000 hours into it just to get better.
Well, I know. Yeah, and that's one of the things I really liked about it. For Fire Emblem games in general, is those kind of SRPG type games where it's a lot of strategy involved of how do I move my character here? All right, if I do that, then these people will be able to attack them. Is it better to back up, or is it better to try to burn down one person so they can't, end up killing me and things? It it, it's one of those types of games I really love. And what is it? If you're looking, Will, for a time sink, um, recently, and I think when did it get released? Got released a while back, I think. It's called the Disgaea series.
Hmm.
It's on Steam now, and they've had it's a long running series. Um, but it's like Fire Emblem where it's very tactical in the way you move your characters and how you have to think about combat. They for Disgaea 2, which they recently released for the PC. They have a demo that you can download and you can see if you'd want to get it. Um, but I played that game on the PSP, and it was Disgaea 1 rather, and that game was amazing. I fell in love with it, and then like I've been following the series ever since, but it's been mostly on PlayStation, so I've been missing out on it. But I've always kind of had a Nintendo console, so a Fire Emblem game being released for the Nintendo Switch, which is, I think they said it was coming out 2018 or something like that.
That
I'm
sounds about
really
right.
looking forward to it because one of the reasons I didn't like Fire Emblem on my 3DS and things like that was because A, the 3DS screen is small. B, I
True.
hate craning my neck down. It's either I crane my neck down or I have to hold out my hands very like in front of me so I don't crane my neck, but then my hands get tired because I'm holding this, console for like hours. Which makes no sense. Why can't I just play it on a home console considering I'm sitting down in a chair and playing it anyways?
Could you ever plug it into a TV? Because I know that was a thing you
No.
could do with what was it? Like Game Boy Advance games. They had
So with the
adapters
Game Boy
for
Advance games, those
the
were
thing.
really cool, and so because you could plug in the adapter for the GameCube, which was the best thing ever. It seriously was the best thing ever. I remember plugging it into the GameCube and being like, "This is the life." I'm playing that, fucking Pokemon on, my TV at home, and the parents are like, "All right, we're, leaving. Let's go, Jake." So, I save, unplug it, plug it into, my Game Boy Advance or whatever, and then I can continue playing it. It was seriously like one of the best things. And I think that was kind of the basis of what Nintendo was doing with the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, because it's so much fun. Like I remember playing Pokemon as well for that too.
Hmm.
And it just made it like I could watch, like my friends and I, for some reason, enjoyed sitting down watching each other play Pokemon.
Yeah,
And it
no,
was just like hanging out, doing whatever.
that is an old only 90 kids will remember this.
I hate
But
all of this.
but like
It's like the
seriously, I
worst
remember.
nostalgia.
Yeah, no, but
Like the 90s
I
weren't that great. They were
no,
interesting and had weird stuff,
yeah,
but I don't
everything
need
was
purple kept
weird.
up ever clear again. Like,
Everything was kind of weird in the 90s, but like it was a really interesting time because technology was going through this like paradigm shift of just rapid growth, like an insane amount of like rapid growth in very little time. But like I remember like if you had your Game Boy Advance or whatever, and people didn't like have theirs, you'd have a swarm of like kids around you, like your friends around you, basically looking at you playing this game. Like it was so fun, and I just remember that like being at some camp or whatever, and I brought my Game Boy Advance, and it wasn't even like oh I don't want to play with my friends. No, I literally brought it there so the friends would just surround me and watch me play, and like we'd talk and hang out. It was just crazy, you know?
yeah, it was awesome. There's a weird community to it. Like you wouldn't think that like handheld Nintendo games
Yeah.
would have worked so well, but like
Yeah, I
even the
remember.
like local multiplayer of like Mario Kart,
Yeah.
it
Like
was awesome.
I remember like sitting on a bench and I was playing like Pokemon Sapphire. Was it Sapphire? Yeah, it was the one with like Rayquaza and the other one.
Yeah, that was yeah, it was Sapphire
Yeah.
Ruby and
Yeah, I remember I sat on a bench playing like Sapphire, and I had like fucking like 6, 7 kids around me, like couple on my side, and some were sitting on the table, you know, to the like park bench or park table or whatever, and they were just watching me play Pokemon. It's this weird like, and kids still kind of do that, but now I think since technology is kind of more prevalent, um, a lot of kids don't end up doing that. Like if there's
yeah,
a bored kid out somewhere and he doesn't have something, he will watch like another kid play video games. That still happens, but
yeah,
now I think it's more of they all have their own, so that never really happens now.
exactly. It's kind of the thing of like music kind of experienced a similar thing where you're looking
Hmm.
at like all the streaming services and all that stuff. Like in theory, you can now absorb so much more music, and you can do so much more with it. And some people do. Like there's incredible amounts of information that I could waste days and days reading about. But like it's one of those things, but it also promotes the level of like you can just set a playlist on shuffle and not pay attention and just kind of ignore it all and not have the community of like putting a record on or sort of very carefully selecting that music as well
Yeah,
because you don't have to do it anymore.
a lot of I think it's kind of weird that a lot of people, and maybe it's because there's more artists because recording technology and things like that, you can get pretty high grade enough to make albums basically, in your apartment or whatever. But I think maybe it's a bit of that, maybe it's because of the climate of music we're in. I don't know. I don't want to get too negative because every fucking generation of music has its problems and stuff like that. But I think it's maybe the technology that we're facing where people don't sit down and like listen to albums anymore and really kind of like absorb that it's all about kind of like singles now.
Yeah, well, I mean that's a lot of it too, actually.
Hmm.
There's like Bruce Springsteen's book. It's really long. It's like 18 hours, but it's worth listening to.
Hmm.
The audiobook is at least. It's like
Right.
400 pages. Um, but that's what he was talking about, like back in, because he started like late 60s,
Hmm.
back around like Chicago and all, or back around like the time Chicago was kind of big and all that
Right.
stuff. When he was back before like Born to Run in 75, people were contracted out to put out like the Beatles put out like 2 albums a year, and like that's how they released things. There weren't
Right.
singles. There was you put out albums like at least one a year, and it
Right.
wasn't until I don't remember which artist, but there was one particular artist. It may have been like I think it eventually was the Beatles or like John Lennon. But when they finally started, they just stopped and they put out one album every 2 years, and that album became massive. And they started consistently doing that. That it shifted out of just album release into like singles, into more carefully thought out releases.
Yeah. It really seems kind of like there's maybe some paradigm shift of how music is being released, um, and how they generate that money. I think it might be because of kind of like iTunes and things like that, where you know, and maybe the radio plays into it a bit as well, but you know, what are what can you sell to people in the digital age? Are you know can you convince somebody to buy like a $10 album at like the least, right? Because most CDs, like even if you go to like FYE still, are around $10 to $12. That's a pretty big asking price. And then with iTunes, you're basically renting it from iTunes, but with iTunes, that's $10. I think it's like $9.99, maybe cheaper depending on what kind of deals they have and stuff like that. So what can you convince people to buy? Are you going to convince them to buy like a $10 album, or are you going to convince them to buy the one song they know they like off that um, album, which is 99 cents?
Yeah, I mean it's also like like MTV and well, as you said, radio have played a pretty fair level of influence into that. Where like
Yeah.
it's shifting from you want to make a music video and you want to do this stuff because when you're releasing singles, that's what people are going to remember,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what people are going to go out and buy. When you buy a whole album, you do get much more kind of a cohesive group of it, whether it's good or bad. Like
Right.
a whole album can be bad because like there's like two great songs and they're the biggest hits of the year of the decade potentially. But if the rest of that album's garbage, it's not worth owning.
Right.
Um, but like it's also kind of when you're
Well,
releasing an album, you get everything, and so it
mhm.
can be amazing, but it can also be terrible.
Right.
You
And
have
I
that
and I
option.
think maybe it's kind of how music is being kind of pushed out now, um even, and this isn't just in like pop, this is, for almost every kind of genre. They want to stay relevant by pushing out a lot of stuff. And some genres are better at it, better staying away from that kind of mentality than others. But pop is by far the worst, where they want to keep staying relevant. So what they end up doing is they really focus on one song, and then they make nine other kind of meh, shitty kind of songs that they can pump out really quickly, and then they'll have a CD, and they can sell the singles, and they'll make plenty of money off that, and then they can probably convince people to buy the CDs. And what I thought you were saying was interesting with the MTV thing, I didn't really think of MTV kind of contributing, but I see where you're coming from on it. Because back when MTV still played music videos, because they don't do that anymore.
This
um,
reminds me of the Dire Straits song.
yeah,
The one song that everyone knows by them. That's the exact line.
yeah,
Was it when MTV still played music videos?
yeah. But
That may be off Blondie actually, from Blondie. I don't remember. Not
Yeah,
the point.
maybe. I don't remember. I'm not too big into Dire Straits, but that sounds about right. But what is it? Like with their music videos and stuff like that, like that was like a good way to gauge like an upcoming album or something like that, where it's like, is this album worth purchasing? You know, because one song kind of reflected how the rest of the album was, you know? Because they spent the same amount of time and energy on every single song generally for an album.
Yeah, exactly. And back in like MTV opened like 81 or 82, something like
So
that.
something like that, yeah.
Dave Holmes, not to just continually list audiobooks that I have. I only have like four,
No,
but
it's fine. Go for
half
it.
of them are about music. Um, and like he was talking about it, and like he was a former MTV VJ and went off to do a bunch of stuff. But like growing up in Nowheresville, like Minnesota or Ohio or even like California,
Mm-hmm.
when MTV came out, if you're just a kid, like the world of music from going to branding reading random like zines and kind of like reviews of like when new music is coming out, MTV became the source for everything. It was this 24-hour news source of like, oh hey, Journey's coming out with this with
Yeah,
Departure
it
or
was
whatever,
very
here are the hits
much.
off of it.
It was very much literally music television, where they had their own kind of like news things, and it was targeted to you know younger people like teenagers and people in their 20s. But like that's how you learned about how things were coming out, because you know back then there wasn't a prevalence of the internet and stuff like that, so you basically had to either get lucky and one of your friends knew it, or you talk to your local uh, you know record store owner and they would tell you about shit that was coming out, or you'd watch MTV. But yeah, MTV launched in 1981.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I
so
thought that was the year.
yeah, you were pretty
Because
close.
in 81 they dropped like 81 was a crazy year. Because in the early 80s you had like ESPN,
Mm-hmm.
you had CNN, and then you had MTV come out, which was the first like three major 24-hour news cycles to come out all
Yeah.
around the same year. And this was the first time that anything like that happened. And so it elevated news, music, and sports. Like that's when sports became like, oh man, you had Joe Montana. Like you knew who Joe Montana was. You knew who Refrigerator Perry was.
Yeah.
You knew all these people and like you knew their personality and stuff. It wasn't just like the Packers won the Super Bowl. It was like,
Yeah, there it was
wow.
a lot more of pushing for like that to be kind of become mainstream culture. Like kind of before then there wasn't this huge thing about sports, but after that, like, because people could follow it like to an umpteenth degree, it kind of became embedded in culture.
Yeah, especially now, like I guess to date this, like the Super Bowl's
It's
happening.
today, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like I think like 50, 40 or 50 million people, I think I heard, at least are gonna watch this thing.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's like internationally, you have ads that cost, was like a 30-second ad is gonna cost like at least $10 million right
Yeah,
off there.
it's some crazy amount of money for like 30 seconds. Like
Yeah,
that's
I think it was 5 million,
insane.
but it was like the exposure is crazy and it's huge,
Oh
and
yeah, you get in
people go
shit
to
tons.
parties
Like most
just to talk
people,
and hang out.
yeah, I mean, like most people, like they don't even watch pardon me, the Super Bowl for sports anymore. They watch it for the ads, cuz like you want to see what these companies are dumping like $10 million on, you know? It's
Yeah, it's
like,
crazy.
what'd they spend $10 million to try to sell us their product? Oh, it's fucking the red M&M, beating Santa Claus with the yellow M&M or something like that, you know?
Exactly.
Like,
Or like Doritos in a laundromat balancing, like hacky sacking them across.
yeah,
It's just weird and obscure, but it works. Or you have like the weird long running Clydesdales and
yeah,
like their whole dramatic story.
yeah. Like it's you want to be the weird ad. Like it's become like the weird ad competition for the Super Bowl, where it's like, can we pump out the weirdest ad that will get people talking about it? Like, I think that's more of like what it is now. Is, let's make this ad so outrageous. We'll spend $10 million. We'll get the people who are watching it, but even the people who aren't watching it, it will appear in like their Facebook news feed because they're like, "This is the craziest commercial of the Super Bowl" and shit like that.
Oh yeah, now they release them ahead of time, and you can like preview all the ads, and because before it was actually a mystery review and reveal, and you could just kind of it was like, oh man, I saw that ad exactly when it was happening. Now you can kind of see them ahead of time, but see them on the big screen too.
Yeah. Like I never actually see the ads before they air.
It kind of ruins the fun of it.
Well, I also don't care.
Oh, well, yeah, I'm not gonna watch Super Bowl. Like I stopped like 4 years ago, but
Yeah.
it's honestly like I don't care about football much anymore. I grew up caring, but it's kind of now it's like whatever. Great.
Yeah. Um, I've always been more of a hockey and baseball guy, so
Oh, I love baseball. I could follow baseball year round.
yeah, baseball's fun to follow, but like it's pretty boring to watch on television. I will give everybody that. On television, it
Yeah.
is so goddamn boring to watch. I don't watch it on television.
I could, but like I've come across so many exciting moments and like baseball and from what I see NASCAR, which I cannot tolerate. Um, we're and alienate other groups here on the show. All of NASCAR fans. Are there kind of sports you can walk away from, and
Yeah.
like, they'll show the highlights again later. But like if you watch it, like I remember the Nationals. One of the pitchers broke the record for most strikeouts in a game, or
Yeah.
tied the record this past year. And I was watching that whole game and watching it all the way into the end, and that was the most exciting thing I've seen for a very long time in baseball.
Hmm.
And like stuff like that happens, but 80% of baseball is kind of boring, to be honest.
Oh yeah, no, like a majority of it's boring. But you know what's not boring? Fire Emblem Heroes. That game is really fun, which is the
Yeah.
basis of this conversation about sports.
Well, most of this conversation, like it started out. Did we start out like photography? We talked about that for a while,
We
and then
talked about
like
Resident Evil, and then that devolved into like photography. But
yeah, exactly.
so like this, but more focused on one topic is what Vsauce does.
Oh, okay. So that'd be
Yeah. So,
interesting.
so like to bring it back full circle, basically what we've been doing this entire podcast is what Vsauce does. Is they kind of go off on these tangents and how kind of things devolve into that. But yeah, Fire Emblem Heroes, really fun game. I've been enjoying the shit out of it. It can get confusing. It's one of those games where you're like, what the fuck do these things do? And you try to find out what they do, and you're like, okay, that's what they do. How do I get them? And you're like, I don't know how to get them. So then you end up looking it up. But it's a very basic. It follows kind of the basic Japanese mobile game, where you have this currency that will allow you to summon things, and when you summon those things, you can level them up and do crazy stuff with them. Once you reach a certain level with them, you can kind of like prestige them and do like stuff with them, but you have to have this other type of currency which you can farm up and do things like that. So then they'll like evolve or prestige up. So it's a very interesting kind of take on it, because a lot of those games, the one that I know is called Brave Frontier, and they have something called auto battle. And in that game, it's not like a tactical game where you have to think about, where am I moving my pieces and stuff like that. It's literally just, all right, attack with the guys. All right, the guys attacked. Cool. So they have this thing called auto battle, which will have your people attack without you having to tell them to do that. And basically, it devolves into the best game you never actually play. You hit auto battle, you let the auto battle thing do its, auto battling thing, and you just sit there, you put on 4 times speed, you do something else, you say, cool, I'm done, collect. All right, I have enough to summon somebody, you summon somebody, and you're like, oh, that's cool, I now have a guy who has like 8 dicks. And then you like send the guy out with 8 dicks and you try to level him up.
It sounds like it could be really fun. It was like, I know this sounds like the combat system for like Civ 5, where it's just like, I was terrible at that game and had no attention span.
Mm-hmm.
And like there is so much more to it, but like the combat itself, there was nothing more than like move your people to them and attack.
Oh, well, like in this game, which is a very, kind of cookie cutter Japanese mobile game. A lot of Japanese mobile games follow kind of what Fire Emblem Heroes is doing. Where, you send your guys off, you have the gameplay, and then you collect the people, and then you use those people, and you level them up, you make them prestige or evolve or whatever they call it. And Brave Frontier is literally, no one wants to play that game. They want to hit the auto battle button, speed it up like 4 or 5 times like speed, and just collect. So it ends up being kind of like a collectathon of, I want to collect these people, and so, I can have cool looking people and shit like that.
Yeah, then you're just playing pretty much like a grinding game where it's like, you just kind of look away. Like if you're doing something in RuneScape where it's all like, it does itself.
Yeah, and
like,
I mean, if you like those types of things where it's like, I want to just basically kind of set it down, not actually play it, view the fruits of letting my phone run this thing over and over and over again, and so I can have this cool like art anime looking character on my phone, and I can be like, that I own that.
Yeah,
these types of games really appeal to it. But the thing I like about the Fire Emblem one is there's an actual game behind it instead of just hit auto battle, even though they do have auto battle in the game.
Oh, they do?
Yeah, they do, and it's terrible.
Okay. Yeah, because like
it will just
I
move your pieces and it will make them attack. And I remember I was like, oh, there's an auto battle? Really? That's cool. I hit battle, and I hit the auto battle button. One of my guys goes up, attacks somebody that she's weak against, doesn't do any damage to the thing, and then the guy one-shots her, and I'm like, why would the AI choose to do that?
Yeah.
It was so bad. If you're trying to level up characters, from what I've heard, the auto battle is really good, but at like higher levels, like once you hit around like level 15 on your characters, that's generally when you need to turn off auto battle and start doing things on your own. But if you're trying to just grind up your characters, get them, to an appropriate level so you can continue on with the story or continue on with missions, you can use auto battle to kind of ease that grindingness.
That makes sense. I didn't know it existed, and so I've been playing. I got my like in one kind of set of playing, I got my characters up to level 7, and so I didn't quite hit that peak of it. The game feels like it ramps up really well, and like the difficulty definitely increases.
Yeah.
But it introduces you in a way that's like, here's the basics, here's easy, and then each level is paced out really well.
Yeah, and then they also have, once you start playing more, they have they have the normal levels, and then they have hard levels, which is they just bumped up the level of the opponents you face, and then they have Lunatic, which does the exact same thing.
But sounds much less fun than actually just playing normal levels,
Yeah.
depending on
Well,
how
well,
intense.
the thing is, it's just the enemies levels. So you still face the same amount of enemies in the same board configuration, but the enemies are harder. They're like level 23 or something like that.
That sounds terrible. At least in my mind, I'm so bad at strategy games. Like
Yeah. You
I
you
I
and
got
Jack always say the same thing when I bring up strategy games. You're like, I'm so bad.
yeah, well, it's like I bought Civ 5. I played an hour of it and realized that I don't know what I'm doing. It's boring, and I don't care enough.
That's fair.
It was like I'm sure it's a great game, and I know people with like hundreds of hours into it and love the game,
Hmm.
but like I could not tolerate more than an hour
Yeah.
of it. I quit like whatever mass group I was in. It was like, you know what, just cut me out. I'll die as a civilization. It's so terrible. Like at least for me, I cannot do it.
Yeah.
I'd rather play grinding games where I don't require the skill, or dungeon crawls where I just need to know timing for attacks.
Yeah, if you're interested in grinding games, definitely check out Brave Frontier. That game is literally just that. You collect things and you're like, this is cool, and then you continue on doing the same thing over and over again, so you can get more things that look cool.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how it works.
Yeah.
As long as it keeps scaling up, like some games kind of top out after a while.
Oh no, this game, Brave Frontier keeps scaling up. It's been going on for a while. Like I downloaded it. Um. Oh Lord. 4 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and like I liked them on Facebook because it was a fun mobile game where you didn't have to do anything and it seemed cool, and I liked them on Facebook, and they're still putting out updates. So
Nice. I
so
mean, it
yeah.
sounds good. That's like a mark of a good game that people still care enough to keep updating it
Yeah, and I
rather
think
than just
I,
let
I
it
think the
sit.
reason is the business model of you can get the things you need to do to summon people relatively easily, but but you can also spend money if you're really impatient. Like
Yeah.
like a lot of these Japanese mobile games tend to have a pretty fair business model when it comes to like summoning the people you need to summon.
That makes sense. I've always liked kind of those games, but you could always feel the gap between what
Yeah.
you did and like what actually people who paid for it was.
Yeah, this one, not so much. Like, the thing is with like this one, you still have to actually play the game. Like all you can do is buy things that will summon like level 1 things. You know, they might be like 5 stars, and or you might get lucky and get a 5 star one, or a 4 star or whatever. But you're generally only able to get the people that actually, you still have to play the game to actually level them up.
I mean, that's good. It's not just like pay to
Yeah,
play where
it's
you.
not pay to get cooler things. It's pay to have the chance of getting something cool that you still have to level up and do the things for.
Okay, that makes sense. I've always that's kind of how I understood what Destiny was.
Hmm.
Where I so badly want to play Destiny, but like I don't have a console and it's not on PC. I don't have 1,000 hours, so
Right.
it's like I've never really gotten into Destiny because of that.
Yeah, that's definitely fair. But yeah, I think that's gonna wrap us up. We talked about a lot. We talked about a lot of things and went on a bunch of tangents about stuff that wasn't video games, like we always do.
Exactly.
All right, well that's gonna do us, and we'll see you guys next week with hopefully 33% more podcast members.
Yeah, it'd be exciting.
Peace.
See you.